Good evening, afternoon, night, morning, whenever you find a way to watch or listen to this podcast. It is me, Omar Shan Borja, the Burger Popper, and joining a longtime friend that we have not had on the podcast for a while. I guess on the podcast network for a while. We're bringing back the Northeast Bull Rush because the Lambert Trophy is back. So, my friend John Glowatz, aka Coastal Elite Ball Knower, is back, bringing back the Northeast Bull Rush because I feel like we are saying beforehand, there is a renaissance, there's a rejuvenation and interest in Northeast college football with the Lambert Trophy back. Everything's back to normal. Everything's
Yeah.
good. No
Not only
elections.
that, Omar, we have ranked Army and Navy. We have probably bowl eligible Rutgers, Cuse, maybe Maryland, Pitt, definitely. I mean, we got plenty to talk about.
Yeah, so plenty to talk about indeed. And so I just want to bring more coverage. I mean, I guess with the Lambert Trophy, and everything. So you might have seen me and Bobby Wilson of the TNT College Ball podcast previewing the week's games. So we'll still do that during the week, but this strictly, kind of a post week kind of look at the bowl projections when it comes to the Northeast and when it comes to specifically like the Lambert Trophy participants and everything and playoff scenarios and whatnot. So, speaking of playoff scenarios, Penn State had a bye this past week, but they are looking good, of course, in the Big Ten. They have, I think, their toughest test remaining is Ohio State. So, of course, every all the bowls align after the playoff is selected. So John, I know you're happy. You're a Penn State fan. How do the Nittany Lions playoff hopes look in the Big Ten?
I think strong, Omar. I think there. I mean, it would take a catastrophe of epic proportions for them to miss the CFP. I think the big question will be, do they get a bye? Do they get a home game? Obviously we have not seen how those scenarios play out and how much of an advantage either of those things end up being. But I think they have to be amongst the top 11 teams at the end of the year. Otherwise, it's a very hot seat starting up for James Franklin. And I think, yeah, I mean, I think they should be heavily favored in the rest of their games, aside from Ohio State, and that one they have a chance. It's at Happy Valley, and now with these conferences being so massive, I really don't love how the tiebreak scenarios are going to work out for the conference championship games. But if they get lucky and they end up playing in the conference championship, they could end up being the Big Ten's top seed and receive that bye.
Yes, I agree. And I do think you mentioned too about the bye. I think that if Penn State wins out and if Oregon wins out, then we could very well see Penn State Oregon in the Big Ten title game, deciding the Rose Bowl participant, at least in the Big Ten side, because I know that the selections for or I guess the home teams for the quarterfinal bowl games were determined. I guess they said that with the Rose Bowl, they'll try their very best to put a Big Ten or a former Pac-12 school in the Rose Bowl. The CFP committee would do that. So I do see that scenario playing out. And, you can kind of use your imagination. It's like the vintage Big Ten again, where the winner of the Big Ten goes to the Rose Bowl, even though it's not the same, but still.
Right, yeah. If we squint, maybe we can pretend it's it's still 1995 and the Rose Bowl is as it once was.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, you said the remaining schedule for Penn State is pretty light, except for Ohio State. I will say, keep in mind for Purdue, you can never. Hopefully, Penn State doesn't get the number two spot in the AP poll, and add to Purdue's pedigree with number two teams. But I
Yeah,
don't
I
see that.
mean, nobody left on the schedule is a complete, pushover either. And I think you always got to be careful the week before Ohio State and the week after Ohio State, and formerly when we had Michigan on the schedule, same deal. Franklin's done a really good job the last 2 years of kind of making sure all the players are locked in those weeks. But prior to that, we would almost always drop a game that we were either looking ahead to Ohio State or Michigan, or we were just coming off of an emotional, usually loss to Ohio State or Michigan, and ended up dropping a game that we should not have dropped. So, yeah, I know we got Wisconsin coming up next, ahead of Ohio State. Obviously, can't overlook them. They're a very, very good football team, and same goes for everybody else on the schedule.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, things are looking great for Penn State, and I think that's a great thing about the 12-team playoff, where it's like these narratives where coaches can't get over the hump. And I guess like not just 12 team playoff, but also these expanded conferences, like you said, where it's like you Dodge and Michigan, where in most years that would be great. But other years, I mean, you want to play Michigan this year. I mean, it's just great because you reach the playoff and it's kind of like a band-aid where it's, everything's good, though those narratives don't exist. Now that narrative was heavy in James Franklin's tenure.
It will be funny if Penn State does end up winning the Big Ten and getting that top four seed this year, being the first year that it's a 12 team playoff. And it's kind of, I guess, moot point. Although I'm sure down the line, the measuring stick will not be making the playoff, but advancing or getting the bye or whatever it is. But yeah, we'll get that monkey on off the back one way or the other.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, if they get I guess if they're a first round team, then I do think that they should win their first round game, depending who it is. But they've had a strong year, but definitely great for Penn State and cooling down James Franklin's seat a little bit. So speaking of playoff, you mentioned at the start Army and Navy in the top 25, part of this renaissance in Northeast college football. So my question is, with this week, we have Boise State, UNLV. Do you think Boise State must drop this game or at least one other game along the way for Army and Navy to make the playoff? And I give two scenarios with that. Say either Army or Navy beats Notre Dame, does Boise State still need to drop a game? Or if they lose to Notre Dame, does Boise State have to drop a game or two for the consideration for Army and Navy if they win the American?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think if either one of those teams gets the W over Notre Dame, then perhaps not. It depends on how dominating uh, Boise State ends up looking in their games. I would say in likelihood, yes, Boise State's going to need to drop a game. They have perhaps the top Heisman Trophy contender in Ginty, if I'm saying that right. Um, and I think that goes a good way in the mind of the voters, especially as well as they performed against Oregon. So I think it's really it's their spot to lose amongst the G5 teams. But if one of Army or Navy can pull that upset off against Notre Dame, and Boise State just looks kind of middling down the stretch here. Yeah, I think we could see a scenario where either one of them, jumps Boise State.
Yeah, and so I mean, this is very unpopular. Me as an Army fan, I prefer bowl games and going to someone's campus on the middle, in the middle of December. I definitely prefer a bowl game to that. So I'm hoping kind of Boise State wins out in the committee, kind of gives them the benefit of the doubt. Army fans probably gonna hate me for saying this, but I will take the Military Bowl or the Fenway Bowl any day of the week over a playoff game. But sue me. But I do agree with you on that one. I think with Boise State's schedule, the game for them to watch out for is not I guess of course UNLV. Other than the UNLV game, the game for them to watch out for is the Nevada game because Nevada's sort of finding their groove. They beat Oregon State and they have a physical style of play, with a great run game and everything. Brendan Lewis is finally in I want to say it's like year 5 of his career, finally showing people, that renaissance in his career and everything. But I think Nevada is definitely a game to watch. And we've seen Nevada ruin Boise State's season before. So just my input.
Yeah, yeah, I'll be very interested to see how that plays out, especially with the bad blood perhaps against the new or incoming Pac-12 teams from the left behind Mountain West teams.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we kind of saw that last night a little bit with Colorado State and Air Force, the Ram Falcon Trophy, which I mean, there wasn't really any bad blood. Air Force is just bad this year. And so I just don't think that played a role. So they kind of folded against the future Pac-12 school. But we'll definitely see that. I do think Nevada is motivated because they did beat Oregon State, the past week. But with this playoff scenario, where do you think Army and Navy would end up should Boise State make the playoff?
Yeah, I mean, I think they can go as high as, maybe the mid-teens in terms of AP poll or the CFP rankings. I say, if one of them does pull off that upset of Notre Dame, then perhaps even low teens, or 11 or 12 potentially. But then that means that they've probably jumped Boise. So going with the original premise, yeah, mid-teens. You know, the bowl scenarios, I would lean on your expertise. We've seen military bowl, we've seen any bowl that you can think of, but I would imagine the Northeast bowls would be very what's the I'm saying the Army and Navy would be very attractive to the Northeast bowls, to the Fenway Bowl, the Pinstripe Bowl as well. But I think they'd probably set their sights a little higher on in those scenarios.
Yeah, I mean that's what I would agree. I think the Fenway Bowl and the Military Bowl are probably the two likely destinations for Army and Navy. I think the Military Bowl, if Navy doesn't make the playoff, I think they should just unpack their bags and kind of relax for a bit because they are not leaving Annapolis for winter break because the Military Bowl would be stupid to not allow or not to I guess not to keep Navy and have them host their first Power Five team at Navy Marine Corps Memorial since 2017, since that Military Bowl. So I think maybe it's a military bowl or playoff for them, really. For Army, there's more ambiguity because, of course, with us being an independent, we still have our independent bowl contracts. This year, we were supposed to be in the Independence Bowl, but the Independence Bowl has been very mum about what exactly who's going to play in their bowl game conference wise. So I'm inclined to believe that there is some flexibility to that situation that the American bowls that be, the American bowl powers that be, would probably pay off the Shreveport Bowl folks and have them pass on Army. In that case, I think the Fenway Bowl is a great destination for Army. In fact, that's the best case scenario for me because I would love to see Army play at Fenway. If not, if the Independence Bowl agreement stays, I think Army's destined for the Independence Bowl against I think either Washington State or Oregon State, which it's a win for me. We hardly play West Coast teams, much less power conference West Coast teams.
Yeah, right on. I'd love to see it as well.
So as for Navy's opponent, the ACC is much harder to forecast for Bolts because, of course, there's the famous ACC Wheel of Destiny, which definitely is spinning this year. Their opponent, I mean, I would say anywhere from Boston College or Syracuse, maybe, but I can't even tell you which. Speaking of the ACC, Pitt is at a surprising 6-0 for the first time since the Dan Marino days. But I think this is just a great start. It's a great storyline. I just don't see it lasting very long. And this might be bulletin board material if Pat Narduzzi somehow finds this podcast. But I just don't see Pitt going better than 2-1, which is a stretch, if not 3-0 against a stretch of Syracuse, SMU, and Clemson. So do you think that Pitt has to go undefeated in these three games, or they can drop a game to stay in the playoff race, or do you think their playoff hopes are slim?
Yeah, I mean, I think they really have to go undefeated to have a chance at the playoff. I mean, I think I haven't looked at the FPI rankings today since yesterday's games, but when I looked at them earlier in the week, Pitt was somewhere like in the 60s, maybe 50s. I can't recall. And obviously they're 19 in the AP poll this Sunday. So that if I don't know if that's the biggest discrepancy between FPI and an AP poll in the country, but if not, it's got to be one of. So I think there is a real poll inertia sort of a deal going on with them, on the strength of being undefeated. So I think they have to keep that going. Otherwise, the first game they lose, they're going to drop like a rock. So I think coming out of the ACC, you got Miami, you got SMU coming on real strong now. Maybe Clemson makes an outside push or something like that. I think to have any sort of a chance, Pitt's got to be undefeated.
I would have to agree with that. I think Clemson's the biggest one for sure because I don't think Clemson plays Miami in the regular season, which I'd have to check that, but Clemson looks really great, honestly. I mean, the loss in week 1 to Georgia looks like a million weeks ago. So I don't really see Pitt beating Clemson. Now, Syracuse and SMU, those should be closer games, but if Clemson doesn't play Miami, which I'm trying to check right now, I mean, internet's a bit slow,
I'll look.
but I think it hinges on that, really, the Clemson game. But I do agree. I think I see Pitt, and I kind of get reminded of like 2015 North Carolina or any other like of those ACC coastal teams that had a really strong regular season, but just really were never taken seriously during the time when Clemson was when the ACC ran through Clemson. Um, Okay, yeah, they don't play. So Clemson does not play Miami. So it looks like Pittsburgh, Clemson, if Pittsburgh beats Syracuse and SMU, should decide one of the spots in the ACC title game. So I do agree with you on that. I think Pitt would end up. I see Pitt honestly going 10-2 with losses to SMU and Clemson, but a 10-2 Pitt squad that is left out of the playoff. Where do you see them ending up in the bowl games? Do you see a couple factors in play here, along with win-loss record? Pitt has a notorious track record of not traveling well, not only to bowl games, also to their home games, frankly. Um, so that could scare the Pop-Tarts Bowl, which is the ACC's consolation prize, from selecting the Pitt Panthers, even though Pitt's never played in that bowl. The Pitt has also not appeared in the Pinstripe Bowl since 2016, so that also is something noteworthy. And as well, the Military Bowl, Pitt has not appeared in that one since 2015. So, what are your thoughts, just given these three uh, pieces of data, John?
Yeah, I think so. If you're saying Pop-Tart is consolation for the ACC, I think they probably only get one into the college football playoff. Maybe they get two with Miami and Clemson, possible. But even if so, I think that SMU or somebody else who makes a late season push gets in there. Possible for Pitt, but I don't see it as likely. I would say, Pinstripe, Military Bowl seem more Pitt speed this season.
Yeah, I think the Pinstripe Bowl selects Pitt because of BC's recent struggles, which we'll talk about next. And Syracuse also played in the Pinstripe Bowl in 2022. They played against Pittsburgh at Yankee Stadium last year for the famed Dan Villari game when he became, I think, the first tight end to run for 200 yards and probably the most random stat figure I've ever heard in my life. That must have been a nightmare for the ACC's SID or whoever to find a tight end who ran for
Hmm.
any amount of yardage. So I do agree. I think the Pinstripe Bowl seems definitely up their alley against whoever in the Big Ten. I'm not sure who that would be, but staying in the ACC, mentioning BC has just looked dreadful these past couple weeks. I honestly, looking at their schedule, they stand at 4-3 right now. I honestly don't even know if they'll make a bowl game at this point. I really think they need to beat North Carolina in a couple weeks. But some of their toughest games, as they stand at 4-3, are games against Louisville, SMU, and Syracuse. Do you think BC puts it together and makes a late push to 6-6 or 7-5, or is the first year of the Bill O'Brien era kind of a disappointing wash at this point?
Yeah, I mean they started the season pretty strong, so I think people got pretty optimistic. It's a coin flip, I think, if they make it or not. Looking at their schedule now, it does look a little tough for them. Louisville, Cuse, SMU, North Carolina, Pittsburgh. The good thing is that four of these games are at home. So I don't know what the Vegas odds would be, but even at home, I don't think they're going to be favored against too many teams here. I think they got to beat, yeah, North Carolina and they got to beat Cuse. And I don't see them getting both of those done. I think they missed the bowl.
I would have to agree too. I honestly think they lose to Louisville. I know it's at home, but I think they lose to Louisville because Louisville's got so much offensive firepower, and Boston College has been struggling lately on offense and defense for that matter too. Louisville is much improved. They have much better quarterback play than last year with Tyler Shuff. But I'd have to agree. I just don't think Boston College puts it together. I think they kind of missed their chance. I really think they needed the Virginia Tech and the Virginia games, to be honest with you. Those are games that they should have won. And I know Thomas Castellanos was hurt, but he was not hurt for the Virginia Tech game. I mean, there really is no excuse. They just let Bishol Tootin just run north, south, east, and west on them. And yeah, so I'd have to agree. And I think that kind of comes as a blow to the Pinstripe Bowl because Boston College had not played in the Pinstripe Bowl since 2017 when they played against Iowa. And I really think Boston College was destined for that bowl game this year. But I think the Pinstripe Bowl figures it out, probably puts Pitt in there, and then puts the Military and Fenway Bowls in a bit of a, you know, in a inadvantageous situation or disadvantageous situation. Staying in the Northeast in the ACC, looking at Syracuse. Syracuse right now is sitting at 5-1. They have some big games. I don't think a lot of people are talking about Syracuse right now in the ACC, but they definitely have the schedule to kind of put themselves in the race. They avoid Clemson. They have Pittsburgh and they have Miami, which the big thing about Miami is Miami could find themselves squeezed out of the ACC title game by way of a head-to-head tiebreaker against Syracuse if Syracuse wins out and goes 11-1. But the thing with Syracuse is they did lose to Stanford at home. So does Syracuse need to win the ACC to be in the playoff, or is it ACC title game or bust for the Orange?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any question that they need to win the ACC to be in the playoff. They're otherwise nowhere near it. I mean, I think they'll definitely make a bowl. No question about that. Um, they've got UConn on the schedule in addition to the ACC teams you mentioned. I think they probably win three, maybe even four of these remaining games. Again, I think they have some good. They have um, they have two away and three at home. But as we were just saying, I think they win that BC game away. They probably beat UConn, Cal. I think they probably get that one as well. Virginia Tech, maybe, and then they probably lose to Miami unless Miami really just starts feeling the pressure of the potential undefeated season for them. So yeah, I think Cuse, no question about it. If they want to be in the playoff, they have to win out, and I don't think they're anywhere near doing that.
I definitely would agree. I mean, they've been fun to watch at times this year, but as of right now, they're 5-1, but their body of work isn't too great. The UNLV win is great for sure. I'm not discrediting that one at all, but the loss to Syracuse is a bit iffy. They kind of struggled a bit against Ohio as well. They let the Ohio Bobcats hang around too. And the Georgia Tech win was impressive at first, but it's looking very less impressive by the day, where Georgia Tech is having a good year. They're a good bowl team, but it's nothing more than just a win over an ACC bowl team for Syracuse. So with that, like you said, Syracuse I think definitely reaches a bowl game with Pitt in the Pinstripe Bowl. I think Syracuse is destined for either the military or the Fenway Bowl at this point, which if Syracuse gets the Fenway Bowl, I think the Fenway Bowl is going to pit Army against Syracuse. Nice classic rivalry. And it's going to be strange seeing that game in the back with the backdrop of the Green Monster, not the backdrop of Yankee Stadium and the white facade, because Syracuse and Army have played plenty of times at Yankee Stadium when the old stadium was up. But I do agree with Syracuse, but it's just amazing too with the 12 team playoff and with everything that we can have a game like Syracuse, Miami, or with the national title implications for both teams, like the old Big East days. So definitely something that's fun to see in this nice Northeastern revival of college football. So going back to the Big Ten, Rutgers is another team that's on a track like Boston College, started outstanding, but a lot of their wins, the quality of their wins have kind of faded, in my opinion, for sure. And I'm sure in yours as well, where they beat Washington on the Friday night and they started the season 4-0, but a close loss to Nebraska kind of stopped the Scarlet Knights bandwagon a bit. And then the following week after the Nebraska game, they lost by a lot to Wisconsin. This week was probably the most inexplicable of all the losses, losing to one win UCLA at home. So with the Scarlet Knights remaining schedule, do you see them making a bowl? Because I'm honestly iffy on the Scarlet Knights making a bowl, especially with Maryland winning. But I mean, the Big Ten is just hard to predict in terms of bowl projections.
Yeah, I mean, they are looking at the remaining schedule. They go at USC, Minnesota, at Maryland, Illinois, at Michigan State. I don't love their chances in any of those games. I feel like USC will find a way to lose to Rutgers by like 1 or 2 points because that seems to be their MO this year. Only half kidding on that, but yeah, I mean, if Rutgers wins two of these games, they'd be extremely fortunate. I gotta say, unfortunately, no, I don't think they managed to do it.
Yeah, and I agree with you there. And I don't think there's really much of an impact in terms of the Northeast Bowl or the Big Ten bowl scene because I think Rutgers gets passed by a lot of the bowls, gets passed by a lot of the Big Ten bowls just because of the depth of the conference And I still think there's that kind of mid 2010s Rutgers stink from the Chris Ash era. I know that Greg Schiano's done great, but I know a lot of people kind of turn their nose away and think Rutgers football. Are you serious? Even though Schiano's done a great job taking them two bowls since 2021, but I still think that kind of exists where honestly, with Rutgers 4-0 start, I think the best bowl I had them in was the Mayo Bowl, just because of the geography of New Jersey being kind of close to North Carolina. But I think a 6-6 Rutgers gets sent all the way to Arizona for the guaranteed rate bowl, where it's a very awkward bowl tie-in, honestly. I don't know why the Big Ten even agreed to it in the first place, but there might be some Diamondbacks fans in the Big Ten executive office. But I do agree. I think Rutgers, it's time to hit the panic mode. But I think this USC game will tell a lot about Rutgers and their bowl hopes. If they lose this game, if they win this game, I think that they can definitely beat Maryland. And Minnesota, maybe not Michigan State, and definitely not Illinois. But I think that if we see enough from Rutgers in this USC game, then that'll give me more confidence to squeeze that to think that they can get a sixth win.
Yeah, I mean the problem is they need to. I feel if you said, hey, they only need one, I'd feel confident they get one of these last five. But getting two, eh, I wouldn't bet on it. You know, it could happen, but I wouldn't bet on it.
Yeah, I definitely would have to agree. So, speaking of former Big East schools, another team whose bowl clock seems to be running out in the Northeast, we have West Virginia. West Virginia right now at 3-4 in a very open, parity-filled, and balanced Big 12. They're 3-4. Looking at their remaining five games, I think there's three games on here that are very hard to predict. There's two, I think, for sure losses, Texas Tech and Cincinnati, but do you think West Virginia puts it together and goes 3-2 in the remaining five and make it to a bowl game?
I mean, again, I can't see it. You know, like they need three. If they only needed two here, certainly if they only needed one, I would say okay. But yeah, they're the Big 12 is fairly wide open. A lot of things could happen, but I don't see them winning three out of five. And they just got blasted by Kansas State. I know Kansas State's a pretty good team this year, but there wasn't a lot to love about West Virginia's performance. So it's not looking great.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I had West Virginia in the beginning of the season going to the Liberty Bowl for the first time since 2020, which was a pandemic year. Um, I think the Liberty Bowl switches to Cincinnati. I think they pursue Cincinnati now with Cincinnati having such a great year at 5-2, and with the Bearcats never appearing in the Liberty Bowl, or not, sorry, not never appearing, only having one appearance, and that coming in 2011. So I think the Bearcats are definitely a hot commodity, excuse me, for Memphis and Liberty Bowl. But I just can't see it either. Maybe some shocking Big 12 magic happens, which we saw yesterday with Baylor beating Texas Tech out of the blue, but I just don't think the Big 12 magic is with West Virginia this year, to be honest. So I definitely have to agree. So I think that covers all of our Power Five teams in terms of bowl games. So just a couple notes, a couple teams that are remaining in the Lambert Trophy kind of conglomerate and everything that look like bowl teams. We have Buffalo and UConn. Buffalo looks like a contender in the MAC, but they did lose to Western Michigan. So Buffalo, I have Buffalo going to the Arizona Bowl. They've never appeared in the Arizona Bowl before. I don't know if you have any strong objections to that, John. I don't know if you're secretly a MAC bowl lineup savant, but any objections there?
Can't say that I am. Only thing that I'm thinking is, Rob Gronkowski was from Buffalo, went out to play in Arizona. Seems like a perfect match, in my opinion.
Yeah, great catch on that one, John. I didn't even think about that, honestly. So there
Yeah.
we go. So there we go with that one. So UConn, of course, UConn coming down to the last team, I guess, sort of in this Northeast Bull Rush. So UConn will get the scraps this year. This is not a shot at UConn fans. This is just a statement of their independence. I don't know if bowl, I guess, scouts were looking at the Wake Forest game to set UConn apart, but I thought honestly before the Wake Forest game, I thought there was a great chance that UConn could end the season at 10-2. That this would be honestly probably the greatest season in UConn FBS history, even better than the Fiesta Bowl season. Now I'm pumping the brakes a little bit more right now on that. They are still a strong team. They'll still make a bowl in my eyes, but do you think the Wake Forest loss? You're a UConn fan, John. You're wearing a UConn shirt right now. Do you think the Wake Forest loss hurt their, I guess, hurt their attractiveness for bowl games, even though they're already getting the scraps?
I mean, yeah, certainly. Like, getting another Power Four or whatever we want to, whatever number we want to attribute to the the power conferences this year. Uh, Getting another win amongst the power teams is only going to help. I think hopefully the powers that be will see that it was a 23-20 game. That UConn maybe arguably should have won a very controversial pass interference call or non-call, shall I say, at the end there. So, they were in it, obviously. They can compete this year, 9-3, whatever the record ends up being. I hope they're as attractive as they can be and just keep lifting lifting their star. And I have to imagine they're they're going to perform well at whatever bowl they're at. And the UConn faithful have started to really try to galvanize behind football. Obviously they're a basketball school, a basketball state, but the more and more I've seen, on social media is everybody knows that football, drives the bus and that in order for basketball to remain, a national power, they need football, to at least be competent and to help them get into, whatever it is, the ACC, the Big 12 down the line, So I think people will travel decently well. The attendance has been really good this year for UConn standards. So I hope the bowl sponsors see that and believe in little old UConn.
I agree. I'm wishing the best for you guys, but as of now, my bowl projections, I have UConn being sent all the way to Idaho because last year it was the MAC of all conferences, which is something I would never thought would have happened. They vacated their famous Idaho Potato Bowl spot for the Sun Belt, so I can see Idaho being one of the least desirable places for MAC fans to travel to and schools. I remember there's an article that sticks in my head from 10 years ago where Western Michigan lost over 300,000 going to the Potato Bowl. So yeah, I think so while the destination isn't great, I can see UConn playing a strong team out of the Mountain West. I have them playing Fresno State. I know the last time they played Fresno State, well, the first time was bad. The second time was considerably better, but the first time sticks up in my mind because that was the first time where I was just like, man, something is very wrong with Randy Edsel's team. But they picked it up the second time, but that's who I have. I have UConn Fresno State in the Potato Bowl. Maybe another bowl game picks them up, or I guess maybe, but I don't know. That's just my thoughts too. Either the famous Idaho Potato Bowl. I'm even tempted to put them in the Hawaii Bowl, if anything, because athletic directors hate the Hawaii Bowl, for obvious reasons, because it costs money. Hawaii is great, but it costs money. So, um, with that, I think we've covered all the different bowl scenarios. Sorry, UMass. I'm trying to think. Sorry, Temple. Temple's improving, but not enough.
Yeah.
Um, so UMass, man. I'm a UMass guy. I cover them for
Sorry,
Hustle
they know what time it is.
Yeah. Um, yeah, UMass, I don't know. Maybe next year. I mean, I really like Don Brown, but man, this is just breaks my heart how hard of a job that is. But with the Mac, maybe things will get better in the Mac, but I just don't even know. But so yeah, John, do you have anything final to add with these bold predictions that we have come up with?
Nothing else to add, man. Before I go, I just want to shout out RIP to my Aunt Linda, was a Air Force doctor at the academy there, had season tickets to the Air Force Academy games, recently just passed. So RIP to her, much love. And yeah, that's it from me.
Yeah, yeah. My condolences to her as well. Hopefully, the Falcons can pull out a couple of wins to end the season for her and everything. But yeah, just it's a tough loss for sure. My prayers are with you and your family, John. But until next time, everyone, thanks for joining us. Hopefully all you Northeastern fans find your way to this podcast and find the time to listen to some bowl talk because definitely, bowls are important still. I know we have a 12-team playoff. Bowls are important, especially when some of these bowls will probably decide the Lambert Trophy. But until next time, everyone. Peace, love, and soul, and the Burger Popper.